Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the city in which we live. Guide us this afternoon as we make our decisions. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
This is the April 2nd, 2020 special call meeting of the Newnan City Council to consider the first reinstatement and amendment of an ordinance for taking of additional measures and renewed declaration of a local state of emergency related to the COVID-19 and for other purposes. You have the ordinance before you. It's been put out to you in advance. It's also been put out to the public on our website. And before we get started, I will say, that I've had, I'm sure as a lot of you have had, conversations with people from the public, not only telephone calls.
Haskell, I can't hear him.
Not only telephone call. Can you hear me now, Rhodes?
Barely.
Well, I don't know how. I'm speaking right into the mic, so I don't know how to help you any more than that.
I understand.
Okay. So we've had telephone calls, texts, and emails from members of the general public.
That's better.
And I'd like to make sure that the general public has a resource that's there 24/7, and it's the city's website. And it has a coronavirus update page on it that's easy to get to. And while I'm not saying that you shouldn't call or text or email me or any one of your members of the city council, that's a readily available source of information, along with the Department of Health for the state of Georgia. So I'll say those two things before we get started. Again, you do have the ordinance before you. As you all know, yesterday Governor Kemp came out with a press release, press conference that announced a shelter in place. Unfortunately, here it is 2 o'clock the next day, and we still have not gotten the order from the governor regarding the details of this press release. So we're ready to adopt this new ordinance that may or may not go against some of the things that he's going to announce in his order. I've been in touch with the governor's office through a couple of the aides up there, and they have no explanation why the governor at this point has not issued that order, but we all wish that he would hurry up and do that. So we're gonna move forward with what we've got to do today. As I said, you got the ordinance before you. There are a couple of things in here that I think, considering what the governor did yesterday, the first one would be on page 4. Okay, George and Rhodes, I need both of y'all to mute your phones, please. George?
George, Rhodes, can you hear me?
Yes.
If you would, during this part, the mayor's asked you to mute your phone. We can hear dogs and scratching in the background.
Unless you need to speak,
But please,
mute your phone, please.
but then when you'd like to speak, please feel free to unmute and speak during the meeting.
I'm sorry, Haskell, hold on, let me try a different way to do it. I'm sorry, I can hear Keith fine.
Okay.
George, it's not you hearing me, it's that we're hearing background. So if you'll mute your phone, and then when you need to speak, unmute, it would be very helpful. Thank you.
I don't have any noise in my office other than me speaking.
Okay, all right, we'll move forward. Like I was saying, on page 4, number 7, the first sentence there says, the governing body of the city requests that all persons within the city consider voluntarily sheltering at home and not leave their homes except as following. I would make a suggestion to the council based on the governor's announcement yesterday that we strike the words consider voluntarily sheltering and replace those 3 words with the word shelter. Like comment from council, please.
I agree with that.
Dustin, comment? Let's go around.
I'm just thinking if it's already covered by the governor, it's redundant for us to do that.
I totally disagree. Comment from Mr. DeBose?
I just don't feel real comfortable doing this until I know exactly what the governor's saying.
Well, the governor yesterday said shelter in place. What we're waiting on his order on is the essential and non-essential businesses. That's what we're waiting on. But he gave an order yesterday to shelter in place, and it was not voluntary. And I think, unless you want to come back to the next.
So Keith, the only thing is you're taking out the word voluntary and you're saying shelter at home with these exceptions.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
No, but you don't think you'll have any further definition of what shelter at home is?
Quite honestly, Mr. DeBose, I'm not waiting on the governor.
Okay.
We've waited weeks on him to act, and we need to move forward with what's best for Newnan, Georgia at this point. That's what he has said all along, that he's looking for the local leadership to do what they need to do.
Okay, I guess my next question then, if we adopt policy that is contrary to his policy, which rules?
Mr. Sears?
It'll be the city's rules,
Okay,
yes.
local over state.
That is, unless, and that's been the conundrum all along, as to what takes precedent under the Georgia Constitution with local home rule and the way the emergency statutes are written. Then I would say that for the citizens of the city of Newnan, it would be the city's ordinance that would take precedent in the event of a conflict. So obviously, we say that cities sometimes can do less, but not more under state law. But these are policy decisions, not necessarily legal decisions. And what the governor is saying is that he's following the Georgia Public Health regulations on this stuff. And so I would say that, this would govern absent anything that, how would I say this, dealt fiscally that might contradict, but in this instance, this would govern.
That helps a great deal. That's what I wanted to know.
Anyone else on this issue? Does
All
anyone
right,
else have,
I'm sorry.
say again?
I don't know. I have a question that somebody sent me an email about, and I was talking to Haskell about. It had to do with a
Okay, Mr. Shell.
zoning,
Mr. Shell.
an ordinance for
Mr.
zoning,
Shell,
and Dean
can
said
you
he wouldn't be able to take the application. Haskell said they couldn't have a meeting, but the way the request is not, it's just staff reviewing where it can go ahead with their recommendation. So I don't know whether the staff's going to be working, and that doesn't seem unreasonable if they've got documents that they can look at. I don't think we need to have a meeting. I know we're not going to have a meeting during that period until the things stop, but it's wrong to have something with the staff going ahead on a variance application.
Mr. Shell, what we're trying to do is resolve one issue at a time, and so that's a separate issue from the voluntary versus
Okay, that's
mandatory.
fine. I just
Okay,
didn't
so if
know.
we could, has anyone else got any comment on the voluntary being replaced,
I would agree with
being removed? Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Shell, considering your next issue, if you'll take us to a page number and a section so that we'll know where you are and what we're talking about, that'd be great.
All right, I don't know where that is. All I got is an email, and it came
Rhodes, you're
from,
speaking to section 15.
okay, that's fine.
Page 6.
Page 6.
Public hearings. But see, he's not asking for a public hearing. He's saying that the city staff continue their review or something with their recommendations.
Mr. Shell, the lady or gentleman that called you with it, they're misinformed. The staff will still be here handling administrative tasks. Now.
Okay, well, because the staff member told them they couldn't do that.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure that we correct that.
Okay, so that's fine, then I don't have to worry about that part of it.
I think what you're looking at here in the ordinance pertains to public meetings of volunteer boards and commission and authorities.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on any other changes?
I have one.
Mr. Gray?
I have one question. It's probably for Brad.
Okay.
Brad, can you hear me?
Mr. Alexander?
Yes, sir.
Alexander, Mr. Corretco has the floor. I'll call on you next.
Okay.
Corretco?
On page 4, the last line of section 5, under non-essential retail stores, specifically sporting goods stores. The reason being, under the United States Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, an essential service is considered, I'm going to read it here, supporting the operation of firearm and ammunition production manufacturers, retailers, importers, distribution, and shooting ranges. They do serve an essential service, and so for that reason I would request that line be stricken.
Which line?
The sporting goods stores, under the non-essential retail stores, bold-faced print up at the top, on page 4, that's section 5.
Sporting goods stores because they possibly could sell firearms.
Correct. And ammunition, and/or ammunition.
Can you tell me the question, Keith, because I didn't understand what Justin said?
Mr. Shell, this is Haskell again.
Yes.
Councilman Carrico had asked that under non-essential retail centers that sporting goods stores be removed so that they can, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, I'm looking at him, so correct me if I'm incorrect, but so that the standard put out by FEMA, which would allow for firearms and the production of, and sale of ammunition can be preserved.
More or less, yeah.
Well, it's not.
Considered an essential service
An
under
essential
Homeland
service.
Security.
By the Department of Homeland Security, not FEMA. I misspoke.
I guess my concern with that is that, truth be told, the Walmarts of the world and some of these other big box stores that fall under groceries and that kind of thing will still be open, and they provide those services as well. So the standalones, to me, I'm like, why?
The other question is, do we have a sporting goods store inside the city limits
Academy,
that continues to sell firearms?
yes.
Who?
Academy Sports is located in Coweta County. The sporting goods stores, Dick's is closed already.
Dick's is closed.
Yeah.
They-
Dick,
But in
Dick's
Academy
is-
in the city,
No, sir, it's in Coweta
yeah,
County.
Dick's is closed, but Academy
Okay.
is not. And Academy is only allowing 25 people in the store at one time.
Academy's not in the city.
It's just outside.
Academy's not in the city?
Yeah.
Atlanta
different.
Ordnance and Range is the only exclusive gun firearm retailer that I know of, other than
And shooting
pawn
range.
shops who may have a cadre of firearms.
So,
but they're not being closed, is that correct?
no, we're specifically not naming.
But would they fall into the category of an actual perceived sporting goods store?
No, it's a gun range. It's
So
not
I'm
a
talking,
sporting goods store.
it specifically states, though, firearms, ammunition, and shooting ranges. Shooting ranges is listed separately,
But this ordinance doesn't.
but it doesn't. But just so it's not understood that sporting goods stores, which could potentially.
But they don't.
Haskell, can you repeat what he says?
Yes, 1 second, I've asked for clarification.
So is Dick's voluntarily closed?
Yes, Councilman Carrico asked if Dick's is voluntary closed,
So
and the answer is yes.
So I'm just explicitly stating that under the Department of Homeland Security, they're saying that firearms, ammunition, as well as shooting ranges are considered essential services.
I think it's important to note that the way the list was crafted, everything under section 5.2, this is not an essential listing of businesses that have been identified by the Homeland Security or any other agency. It was actually the reverse. So if they're not listed, they would not be closed. So I think your clarification is taken that this specific list would not include those facilities related to the sale of guns,
Correct.
fire
as
ranges.
well.
So, yeah, correct.
Because generally that generally falls under sporting goods stores.
Yes.
Okay, I have a question too.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't say anything about like outside businesses like yard services and all that, so I assume that they are still able to operate under this ordinance.
As Mr.
That would,
Johnson said, if it's not on the list, it's not being addressed with this ordinance.
that is correct. If it's not in the list,
Okay.
it's not being addressed, correct.
Okay, Mr.
Okay.
Alexander, what's the next, do you had a question? Mr. Alexander?
Yes, sir.
You
This
had a
is
question?
probably for Brad. A neighbor just texted me, and it's an interpretation. I told them I would defer to Mr. Sears. They travel up to the north side of Atlanta to take care of an immediate relative every 2 or 3 days, I believe. And they want to know, is our ordinance going to prevent that from them leaving?
Councilman Alexander, this is Cletus. I can answer that. If you look at section 7, in the exemptions, D, it actually says that when a person is procuring essential food or medicine or seeking essential medical care, it goes on to say, or medical care to another person. So our particular ordinance would exempt that, and they would be allowed to travel. I cannot speak to other jurisdictions as to how they
Right.
may regulate that situation, though.
Right, okay, all right, 7 Delta, thank you.
Mr. Bowes?
Yes, thank you. I'm having a little difficulty understanding exactly which stores would be department stores. If somebody could clarify that for me, please.
I hate to include specific names, but the intent was more of the Belk, the Cole, the J.C. Penney. That is typically the type of department store that this would be referring to.
That would be selling like what we would consider soft goods.
That would be correct.
General merchandise.
So primarily clothing, not like the Walmart, which has.
Clothing and
Right,
accessories,
well,
that's correct.
Yeah, Walmart has pharmacy and food. so
Same
they're-
as Target.
That's right. Okay, anything else on any other item?
One other one then. I would consider striking all of 5.2 as it's covered under 6. All establishments not covered in section 5 of this ordinance which remain open during the emergency must post signage on entrance doors informing consumers to maintain at least 6 feet of personal distance between themselves and others, and shall not allow more than 10 people into an establishment at any time if such social distancing cannot be maintained. I believe that section 6 pretty much covers all of that in 5.2.
No, and I'll answer that, and here's why. Some of these establishments, and I will say barbershops and hair salons, just use them as an example. If we don't close those businesses, those employees at those businesses, based on my understanding of who I've talked to who run those businesses, cannot file for unemployment. So if they're if they're in limbo, they can't file for unemployment. So we have to close them eligible to file for unemployment.
Okay, I guess I figured most of that was already covered in 5.1 in our previous ordinance,
No, not,
because it specifically does say, nail salons,
no.
everything in close proximity, which would include the grooming.
No. That's why we had to come back here today to do all this. Okay, anything else? All right, so the only change that I know of, or amendment to the ordinance, was the suggestion in number 4 to remove the consider volunteer sheltering, and change that to the word shelter.
That was section 7?
Yes, page 4, section
Section 7.
7. So that's the only change. If we recap, Mr. Sears?
Mr. Mayor, in what has gone on with the adoption of some of the orders and more recent ordinances, I would like to add one additional section to this, which section says that,
Would this be a brand-new section?
pardon?
A brand-new
A
section?
brand-new section.
All
It's
right.
just a very simple statement. It just says that adoption of this ordinance does not create any additional right in anyone that might otherwise be allowed under the charter of the city of Newnan. And the reason that they're doing that is simply because of the fact that we are removing certain rights. And at the time that we adopt this, if we do have to come back, we don't want to create a window that says, you already gave me a higher right. So it's more of a technical situation, and I would like to add that statement.
Okay. Anybody understand what he's doing there?
So this is just a right to terminate at the certain date and time.
Well, you're terminating certain rights that are under there.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
a lot of these are.
Mr. Steers.
Building permits, who's not proceed.
Do you have that written as we can,
I can. I can show you if you want.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm in support of all of these things, for the safety of our citizens of the city of Newnan, and I appreciate your bringing this back up so we can address this and adopt it. So if you're looking for a motion, I'm willing to make it.
Let's let Mr. Sears clarify. What do you have there, Mr. Craver?
we're making amendments on the fly, as you can see on the screen.
Okay. Is he gonna, so he's gonna type that in for us to be able to read and
Yes, sir.
I'll
Yes.
be ready just as soon as he finishes that amendment.
Did you have something you wanted to say, Paul?
I had a question related to, we're going to go through April the 30th, and best I understood that the governor's going to go through the 13th. Is that correct?
That was my understanding. Of course, we
Yeah.
hadn't seen.
So
it
we're,
yet.
we're going, taking this all the way above and beyond to the 30th. And that was my only question. If he comes back and and if it actually does read the 13th, have they not modified it? Are we still going to keep it with the ability to terminate that, should we choose earlier? Your thoughts?
Based on what I heard him say yesterday, he had picked the date of the 13th because of some authorization he had had from the General Assembly that died on the 13th, that expired on the 13th. Now, what he's going to do with the General Assembly to come back and extend that, I'm just not sure.
Yeah. I have no issue with the 30th. I think it's a good game plan to extend it out
Right.
above and beyond, no doubt.
Every public health official we hear concerning the month of April is,
Right.
you know, it's going to
Crucial
be
month.
the whole month that's going to take us through this, not the 13th.
Because it looks like capacity's not going to reach, we're not going to really know bed capacity. I think we understood until the 24th, I believe, of April is kind of when things are going to max out. So we're really giving ourselves some leeway.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, I have one item I do want to bring up in light that we have not seen the governor's order, and it relates to our organizational plan of action. Obviously, where this body adopted the plan of action, which identified 3 different levels. We're currently in level 2, and there are multiple steps that we can actually implement inside of level 2 without going to a level 3. A level 3 is basically a local government shutdown without, with the exception of police, fire, and sanitation services. I think when I see the governor's order, it may be more clear, but there may be some opportunity to not close our businesses, because we're doing a really good job of continuing businesses remotely, issuing permits remotely, et cetera, plan review remotely, whether we close the administrative offices.
Right, and I can take us to level 3 if necessary without the council reconvening.
I think we could actually, even if we close the administrative offices, that would not be a level 3 action.
No.
It just would,
That's just you managing.
yes, so just wanted to
That's correct.
bring that to your attention. And that may be likely, we'll know more after I read the order.
And if you're looking for, us to weigh in on that, I'm all for protecting the staff by letting them get on.
Yeah, we're starting to get questions, just like we're sitting here today wondering what the governor's order is going to be, so is my staff.
So, Mr. Craver, are you through?
Yes, sir. And I checked with,
Yes, sir, I am, and I checked with our city attorney, Mr. Sears, confirmed that that's what he was looking for to be in there. The section numbers may be out of line, I may have to reorder those. It reads as follows. Adoption of this ordinance does not create any additional right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable in law or in equity by any party against the city of Newnan, its departments, agencies, officials, employees, agents, or other person or entity.
Okay. All right, so, Ms. Jenkins, did you have a motion, if you'll speak it up and into the mic?
I have, I move that we adopt this ordinance with the changes to section 7 and the changes to add section 21.
Okay, I have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
For clarification, if you have a second, then it's a new section 21, and it changes the old 21 to 22.
Okay. In-
probably have to flip them. If you want, I can do that. Let's just.
Then
I think it's fine as written.
He's gonna change it.
Okay.
Correct, Mr. Cricko, correct.
Okay, any other points of clarification, discussion, questions?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
I just fear that this is moving us into a place that we don't necessarily need to be going prior to hearing from the governor. And just for due consideration that the governor states that we're maybe treading into some, going where we ought not be going at this point.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I do have a motion and a second to amend with the changes noted. No other questions or comments? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Okay, Mr. Gretko, I understand your position. I'm going to give you an opportunity to consider changing your vote, because if you don't, I'm going to have to call another meeting for tomorrow to have everyone else reconvene here, and it's going to pass anyway. So I'd give you the opportunity to reconsider.
I appreciate that, but I.
Thank you. The motion did carry. My next order of business is to call a special call meeting of the City Council of the Newnan, Georgia for a second and final reading at 2:30 tomorrow afternoon in order to adopt this ordinance. Any other business to come before us? I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. We're adjourned.